The game yesterday, though, between the United States and Serbia in the semifinals of the 2024 Olympics was one for the ages, where we've been talking up this Team USA roster and talking about how it is one of the most talented groups we have seen in decades, possibly ever, but at least since the Dream Team, I would say. And they were on the ropes against Serbia yesterday, facing Nikola Jokic, and ultimately it took the absolute best of all of the top players of this past generation in the likes of LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid to be able to dig their way out of the hole that they were put into early on. And I guess it was a little naive of me to think that what we had been seeing from the US in these past few games, that they were just going to continue to roll and that they had put all of their issues behind them and they were going to cruise all the way throughout. That's not typically how this ends up working, and that was definitely the example that we got yesterday. And we talked about it just the other day as well, that in order for any team to have a chance of knocking off the US, they were going to have to be elite from the three-point line. And that's what Serbia was for the first three quarters of this game. 15 of 30 from three through the first three quarters. They led by as much as 17 points. And you have the three-point shot flowing along with having Nikola Jokic manning the middle for you. That is a little bit of a scary scene for any team, and that includes the United States, despite how talented they are. Now, we were sort of sitting around here waiting through these first handful of games to get the Steph Curry moment, and it finally arrived in a massive way yesterday. 36 points for Steph Curry, just 1 point short of the single game United States men's basketball record that Carmelo Anthony set in 2012, I believe it was, where he scored 37 points. Curry, 12 of 19 from the field, 9 of 14 from three, and he was really the reason why the Team USA was able to stick around as long as they were. He scored 14 of the US's first 15 points. He had 17 total in the first quarter. And again, you can definitely point to, I wouldn't say just Steph Curry, the defense in general with Team USA, this was a little bit of a low point for them. And Curry maybe deserves a little bit of responsibility there in terms of the defense, but I don't want that to take away from the unbelievable performance we had. And Steph Curry, I just think he is one of the most fun basketball players to watch when he is hitting offensively. There isn't a shot in the world that he can't hit. And he was also a massive part of the closing run as well, where sure, he did his damage early, but it's not like he burned out in that first quarter. He continued on from there and even scored 9 points in the fourth to help close this game out for Team USA. And it was just so incredible seeing him, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James all very likely in their final Olympics, and them just cooking at the end together. It was really an appreciate greatness moment where, along with Steph Curry, we saw Kevin Durant, who was maybe a little bit quiet for the first portion of this game. He only, I think, finished with 9 points in this ultimately, but he played down the stretch for the final stretch for the U.S., and he was unbelievable, hit some of the biggest shots of the game, including one of the threes on the 6-point play that happened around the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter, which really turned around the entire shift in momentum, where he hit that first three, and then he also had the pull-up shot with under a minute left. That was one of the most prototypical Kevin Durant shots that I think you could have drawn up, where it's an off the dribble, just with that ridiculous wingspan, rising up over a defender that can only really dream of having a real impact on the shot. That's what Kevin Durant has been doing for years now, and it was just such a classic moment for KD. That ended up being the dagger during this game as well. Again, maybe a little bit quieter in terms of the overall scoring output, but he was able to surpass 500 career Olympic points, becoming the 8th player in Olympic history to do so. So quite the Olympic career for Kevin Durant, and the legacy isn't completely finished off just yet because they are moving on to the gold medal game, of course, to try and take home another one. But it was Curry, it was Durant, and of course it was LeBron James who recorded a triple-double in this game, 16 points, 10 assists, and 12 rebounds, and he was the initiator for most of the action down the stretch. And it's just kind of funny looking back at all of these false narratives that were thrown out there about LeBron and the lack of clutch ability there, and almost the fact that he has aged over the course of these years. He has gone a little bit less to being the physically dominant force that is going to be score first and get himself to the rim at will, while he obviously still can do that, and he did it a couple times in transition during this fourth quarter. It's just the IQ with him is so impressive, and he is just, a very, very overqualified point guard at this point in his career. He was setting up everything for Team USA, and it was just it was so cool to see, again, all three of these guys firing at the same time. But, the back-to-back transition layups from him and Steph Curry also felt pretty special. And it was just a ton of fun to watch all of these guys sort of coincide, and give credit to Joel Embiid as well, who has faced a ton of criticism throughout these Olympic Games, and he sort of fit in a perfect way to the system where, like I mentioned, LeBron was running the point guard, but everybody was involved, and everybody was involved with one another's plays. And it was just a gelling of Team USA that, again, even though they were sort of dominating the past couple games, ended up beating Brazil by over 30. It was 2 straight 20-point wins beforehand. What you look at during the final stretch of this game and the cohesion with this group, including Joel Embiid, which I definitely had my concerns with him being able to play into a team system like that. All of it came together in an incredible way, and I definitely want to give Embiid his flowers for this performance, because I think that, when you look at his overall legacy up to this point, we know about the individual talent, but just objectively speaking, he hasn't necessarily had all that many, extremely high stakes games. And he's been to a couple Game 7s throughout his career, the one against Toronto in 2019, last season in 2023 against the Celtics, but we've sort of been lacking, those real career signature performances. And obviously the 70-point game is extremely memorable and is one that is going to go down as one of the greatest in his career. But I do think that this game was sort of on par with that as well, where he scores 19 points, he hits tons of big shots for them, and it was really cool finally getting to see Embiid, and again, that talent that we all know that he has, and put it to, I wouldn't say put it to good use necessarily like he doesn't normally, but having that come through in these massive moments that it feels like at 30 years old, we should have had a number of these big time Embiid moments. And here he was for Team USA with their backs against the wall, and that he was able to, anytime they needed to lean on him, he went out and he got tough buckets. And, especially too, we saw him flying around a little bit more. That baseline dunk that he had in the second quarter was probably the most explosive play that I think I've seen from Embiid in what feels like years. Just the way that he got up, he's diving all over the place, and maybe not quite as much on the flopping end, which we have seen from him at times, but legitimately just hustling. And I know that some people are sort of knocking him for some of the rebounding stuff. I don't fully put that on Embiid. You look, there was definitely, the U.S. was losing the battle on the glass in those final few minutes. That became a concern, but ultimately, Embiid's standing there, and he deserves maybe some of the blame, but he's also standing there with 3 blue jerseys a number of those times, and he didn't really have all that much help in terms of the rebounding portion. So an excellent game from Embiid. But speaking of rebounding and speaking of him not having help, you know what would have helped out Team USA to grab some extra rebounds there? Is Jayson Tatum playing, which he did not once again in this game. And, maybe a guy that averaged 10 rebounds per game en route to winning a championship just a couple months ago. That probably seems like something that could help out on the rebounding front for Team USA. And I just don't understand how there are 0 minutes available for somebody who is, 6'8", 6'9", can play really good defense and provide good rebounding. And again, this is something that Steve Kerr has talked about in the past, that he just didn't see the matchup necessarily favorable for giving Jayson Tatum minutes here. But like I talked about, the defense was a little bit of an issue for Team USA, especially on the perimeter, just not being able to get up and contest these shots, and the discombobulation that was taking place in terms of the assignments up top. Jayson Tatum, I think, definitely could have impacted that in a positive way. Now, when you talk about Jayson Tatum and him not getting minutes, the natural question is, well, who is he going to play over? And I think that it's obviously important to remember that everybody on this roster is incredible. And it's not necessarily a slight to them if they were to get their minutes reduced a little bit in order to make way for a player like Jayson Tatum. But, I specifically am looking at Devin Booker, where, again, not trying to bury him by any means, but 6 points and 1 assist in 24 minutes played, took just 4 shots. Now, give him some credit, he was the other half of that 6-point possession, along with Kevin Durant knocking down the 3 late in that, with around the 7-minute mark of that fourth quarter. So he had a big moment for himself without a doubt. But after that shot, the final 7 minutes of the game, he was pretty much invisible. And when he was noticeable, it was that Nikola Jokic was trying to punish him defensively and take him in the post. And ultimately, again, USA comes out with a win here, so I don't want to, make a bigger deal out of it than necessary. But at the same time, I sort of look at the way that this all went down, and that the U.S. was struggling with rebounds. With just a few minutes left, there was the offensive rebound that set up the Serbian wing on the perimeter for a wide open 3, and he couldn't hit it. It's a different game if that goes down, and it was generated because Serbia grabbed multiple offensive rebounds, 3 or 4, in that final 5-minute stretch. And I just think that Jayson Tatum could have been better in terms of filling in the supplementary role than Devin Booker, what he was able to give. Now, again, don't want to slander Devin Booker by any means. I just feel like it was a misplay by Steve Kerr. And Booker, I understand he's a more reliable 3-point shooter than Tatum, so maybe the argument is that Serbia you wanted them to actually space out a little bit better and not have Tatum, who's struggling with his jump shot, sort of standing in the corner and having his man double teaming. But I can't imagine Serbia would be totally willing to give Jayson Tatum any shot he was hoping for, and I thought it was a mistake on Steve Kerr with how he played this out. But let me know how you feel about that in the comment section. Some notes here on Serbia, though. I definitely didn't have Bogdan Bogdanovic becoming a heel on my bingo card for this game. He was talking trash to Carmelo Anthony. He was doing the 3 to the head. He at least had the offense to back it up, is the thing. 20 points in the game. So respect to him for talking that talk. But that being said, as somebody who was rooting for Team USA, it was maybe a little bit, I didn't hate watching, I should say, Bogdanovic missing shots, the turnovers, and having Serbia sort of fall apart at the end there. LeBron also hit him with the too small, touching the floor in that second quarter, so that was pretty funny as well. But Serbia, they were in this game because of their three-point shooting, and ultimately they weren't able to close it out because of their three-point shooting as well. Like I mentioned, 15 of 30 from the three-point line through the first three quarters, 0 of 9 from 3 in the fourth. So that is ultimately, and they got good looks as well in the fourth, but the law of averages just sort of came crashing in and caught up with them. Other notes here, though, put some respect on Nikola Jokic's defense. I think that a lot of NBA fans are sort of under this impression that Jokic is a negative from a post-defending standpoint, but I can't say it's fully to the credit of Jokic, but Team USA was really struggling to get in the paint and score in the half court during this game. It wasn't really until the fourth quarter where they were running out in transition more to be able to actually get some good looks at the rim, and I do think that Nikola Jokic is responsible for that. He also had that sequence where he blocked LeBron at the rim, then came down on the other side and ended up getting the and one. I just feel like it was also so cool. So, Jokic, we already know he's great. I mean, this would have been the ultimate feather in his cap in terms of the overall pantheon of where Jokic stacks up all time, even though I don't think that him losing this game hurts him by any means. But I thought it was really cool getting to see him, and it's not just him. I think in general, we're seeing the passion that comes with these Olympic Games and playing for these players playing for their countries. I think just means something different, it was really cool to see it from Jokic, who's typically so stoic and doesn't necessarily show emotions like that. This was a very emotional game, and I just thought it was so exciting, and it's part of why I'm so excited about the possibilities of the globalization of basketball, because we just saw different levels. It just means something more to these players, especially from the European countries, where they have just a different sense of pride, in my opinion. And I think that also when you just look at the way that this is all baked in, it's the level of pride for your home country, the do or die setting in these elimination games. The stakes just feel so high, and definitely a different vibe to it in comparison to these 7-game playoff series that we have in the NBA. So I thought it was really exciting to watch all of this go down. I was obviously rooting for the U.S., but I love that they were challenged, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the continued development of basketball overseas and having the U.S. be tested maybe a little bit more moving forward here. But the U.S. does officially knock off Serbia, and they are going to be advancing to face off against France in the gold medal game. So I'm going to dive into the France game versus Germany. Another little bit of a surprise there, as France has been on a little bit of a Cinderella run up to this point. So we are going to dive into that matchup as well and preview a little bit of what that gold medal game will look like between USA and France. So we are going to be diving into that. But first, a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.